All right. So today what we are doing is we already did the solving part. So today we are going to do graphing with quadratics. Not graphing, but we're getting ready for graphing. Next class we'll do graphing. So there's two forms when you have quadratics. There's more forms, but the two that we're going to talk about today are standard form and vertex form. So standard form is that ax squared plus bx plus c. What's nice about standard form is that the y-intercept, and this is down at the bottom. The y-intercept is always when x is equal to 0. And it's where the graph crosses the which axis? Y-axis. All right, so if we look up here, and if it's when x is equal to 0, well, if this was 0, what's 0 squared? 0, and what's 0 times something? 0. So like that term right there is going to dissolve. Well, what about here? What's 0 times something? So when x is equal to 0, these two terms disappear, and all you're left with is c. So the y-intercept, if you're looking at standard form, is super easy to figure out. It's x is 0, so you can put a 0, and y is always equal to the c value. So again, that only works if you're in standard form, so you can look at standard form to find y-intercept. Okay, so you can look at standard form to figure out your y-intercept. But the y-intercept, other than the y-intercept, standard form is not very useful when you need to graph a quadratic. So the only way that you would be able to do it is by plugging in a bunch of x values and figuring out a bunch of y values. It's not very helpful when you're graphing quadratics. And then you might end up with fractions along the way. So graphing in vertex form is extremely helpful. So if you have vertex form, it's very useful to graph. Vertex form looks like this. Do you remember when we graphed absolute value and we had the absolute value bars? And when we had the bars, that was where the x grouping was. And it also had x minus h. It didn't have the square part. It just had the absolute value bars. And so we know that because it's minus h, everything that happens in the x grouping is opposite. So keep in mind that there's a negative in the formula. And then the k moves us how? Y'all are going to make me sad. It's either up, down, left, or right. How does the k move you? Up or down? And then, so if that moves you up or down, then how does h move you? And one way you can remember is that h is with the x grouping. X is left and right. So if you start there, then the k has to move you up and down because the x part moves you left and right. So the vertex is always going to be h, comma, k. So keep in mind that it's h. So since that is negative, you always have to pull it out as opposite of what you see. So hk. So the vertex cuts the graph in half and represents the max or minimum, max or min point. So max or min, if it's a maximum, it's going to have a graph and it looks like that, where you've got a maximum on the top. If it's a minimum, it'll look like that, where you've got a minimum on the bottom. So the vertex is always the very top or the very bottom of your graph, and it cuts your graph in half. Another thing that cuts your graph in half is the axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry is just where you have your graph. It's a line that, it's an invisible line that cuts your graph in half. It will always go through the vertex point, and it's always going to be an x equals equation. It's not x equals, you don't put anything in that blank. It's just showing you that it is an x equals equation. So the A value is what goes all the way into the front. And this is just like when we graphed the absolute value. So the V's, it's the same. So A is going to tell you that you are up when A is what? What do you think? Positive. And you're down when A is negative. And all I mean by that, up means you're facing up, down means you're facing down. That's all it means, up or down. So I just front loaded you with a bunch of information. We're not actually doing like real graphing today. Today, all we're doing is just making a simple sketch. But what we need to figure out how to do is to go from standard form to vertex form. So today I will show you how to do that. So our first two examples, it says complete the square, complete the square. That is how we're going to go from standard to vertex form. We learned how to complete the square to solve quadratics. Today, we're going to complete the square so that we can graph them. So remember, completing the square is when you do b divided by 2, and then you square it. The first thing that we have to do for completing the square is we have to get it set up. Today, it's going to be slightly different than when we completed the square for solving. And it's slightly different because before, when we did completing the square, we brought that C term, we brought this term to the other side. We're not going to do that today because see how it's f of x? F of x is like y. So we want to keep it f of x equals or y equals. We want to keep it y equals. So we have to work with it with this on the same side. So I'm going to have to show you how to do that. So we'll set it up, f of x is equal to x squared. You're still going to have two parts. You have the part with the x's and then the part with no x, the constant, when you complete the square. And then I leave myself a blank. And then I do plus 4, and then I leave myself another blank. So again, this is where we're going to factor, and then this is going to tell us the k part. So you're going to do completing the square, but it's two different parts. So before, when we completed the square, anything that we added to one side, we had to add it to the other, right? If we're putting it on the same side, the only way that you can do something to an equation without changing it, if you're putting it on the same side, don't write this down. I'm just going to show you. So let's say I have x plus 3. And I need to add something to 3. Let's say that I need to add 7. But I can't change it from x is equal to 3. So how can I technically add something without changing it? The only way I can do that is to also subtract 7. So if I have x plus 3 plus 7 minus 7, I still have x plus 3. See how I didn't really change it? I undid it. So when you're working all on the same side, you don't do plus this, you have to plus and minus when you're working with something all on the same side. So this time when we do complete the square, we're going to add, and then on the second blank, we're going to subtract. So this is slightly different. So now I need to complete the square, figure out my magic number. So off to the side, I can figure that out. I have 2 divided by 2 squared. 2 divided by 2 is what? What's 1 squared? 1. So I'm going to add 1, but I have to subtract 1 so that I don't change anything. I'm going to continue on completing the square. So I have f of x, and now I can factor it. So this little part here, it always becomes x, and then you take that middle term and you half it. So what's half of -2? -1, right? And then now for my second part, I look at this. So what's 4 minus 1? That's it. So now I am in this form. So for this problem, what is A equal to? So this is the form. What is A equal to? Where's the A? It's right here. It's whatever in front of the parentheses. Nothing's there, so it's a 1. So A is 1. What is H? +1. Remember, it's always opposite. And then what's K? It's 3. Since we had a rough time with that, let's jot that down. A would be 1, H would be 1, and K would be 3. Problem number 2, we're going to do the same steps. We have f of x, and I'm going to set it up x squared plus 6x, and I'm going to leave myself a blank, plus 5, leave myself another blank. To figure out what goes inside my blanks, I have to look at the middle term. The middle term is 6, so it's 6 divided by 2 squared. What is 6 divided by 2? 3, and what's 3 times 3? 9. So I'm going to add 9, but I have to undo it, so I have to subtract 9. So again, you look at the first 3 terms together to factor. It will always set up with parentheses, squared, and an x. Then you look at this middle term and you just half it. So what's half of +6? +3. All right, and then I have 5 minus 9. What is that? -4. And that's it. So for this one, what is A? A equals 1. What is H? -3. And what is K? -4. And we have a lot of these that we're going to do, so we'll get good at it. Most of them that you're going to do, I would say majority of those that you're going to do are going to be just like the first 2 problems, but you do have a few problems where A is not equal to 1. So like here, A is not equal to 1. Here is A is not equal to 1. So I'm going to show you 2 of them just so that you know what to do when A is not equal to 1. So for question 3, we're still going to set it up. First, we have to divide out whatever number is in front of the x. So if A is not 1, we have to divide it out, but you only have to divide it out of the x terms. This works separately. So we're only factoring out the 2 from the first 2 terms. And when I rewrite that, it goes in front of these parentheses. And I'll leave my blank inside the parentheses. Now my second blank has to be set up with parentheses too. And so the 2 on the outside of those parentheses is a positive. So it's going to be a +2 with parentheses. So if you have parentheses on the left, you got to have parentheses on the right. It has to be the same. So this is a little bit different when A is not equal to 1. You have to factor out whatever is there, but only out of the x terms. And we're still gonna set it up. This part is gonna be worked separately than this part. We still need to find that magic number. So our middle term is 8. So we're going to do 8 divided by 2, and then we're going to square it. So what is 8 divided by 2? 4. What is 4 times 4? 16. So I'm going to add 16, and then I subtract 16. We're going to keep evaluating just like we did before. So I get f of x is equal to, now I have a 2 outside. I have my parentheses, it's squared, and I put an x. My middle term is positive 8. What's half of positive 8? 4, positive 4. So I put positive 4. So that part is now factored. For this part, I have 29 plus 2 times negative 16. Well, what's 2 times negative 16? So I have 29 minus 32 is going to be my second part. 29 minus 32. What do I get? Negative 3. So for this one, what is my A value? 2. And then instead of saying what is H and K, I'm going to put it as a vertex. So what is H? Negative 4. And what is K? Negative 3. So that is my vertex point. Thank you. Question 4, we're going to set it up the same, but this one has something in front of the x squared term. So we need to factor out that A value. And again, we're only going to factor it out of the first 2 terms, only the x values. And this time it's negative 2 that I'm pulling out. So I get negative 2 in front. Negative 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. So I have x squared. That's what I need. Negative divided by negative is a positive. 12 divided by 2 is 6. I'm going to leave myself a blank. Minus 18. I leave myself a blank, but it has to be minus 2 parentheses with my blank. So the parentheses are going to look identical. So here I have minus 2 and then parentheses. Here I have minus 2 and then parentheses. Now I need to figure out my magic number. It's whatever I put in my blank. So I have 6 divided by 2 squared. What is 6 divided by 2? 3. 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to add 9 and subtract 9. So I get negative 2 in front of my parentheses. I can put my x in there. I can square my parentheses. To figure out what goes here, I just half my middle number. So half of positive 6 is positive 3. Over here, I have negative 2 times negative 9. So I have negative 18 plus 18. What is that? So that goes away. It's like plus 0. So I'm done. So what is A? Negative 2. And what is my vertex point? Very good. So this negative, it tells me that I'm actually going to face down. So this is the only one that I've done so far that instead of facing up, it would face down. That negative tells me I'm going to face down. So the A value is technically just 2, but I want y'all to know that it's also facing down. Are we okay so far? So this is why we had to learn how to complete the square so that we can do things in vertex form. Let's keep moving. The next two are the same. All I'm doing is asking you to find things. Well, we've already been finding things. First, it tells you complete the square so that you can be in vertex form. We just did 4 examples. We're going to identify the y-intercept, the vertex, whether it opens up or down. We're going to make a sketch, identify axis of symmetry. Seems like a lot, but it's all really simple stuff. So the y-intercept, I said that you find actually from this form. So from this form, what is the y-intercept? It's -5. So if you look back on your notes, it's the C value. So you figure out what, let's see, that is for B. So y is equal to -5. Another way to write a y-intercept would be 0, -5. Either way is okay. Y is equal to -5, which is the point 0, -5. Let's just get practice jotting it down both ways. The next thing that we need to figure out is the vertex. So the only way we can do that is to get this in vertex form. So I'm going to get ready to do that. So to figure out my magic number, I'm going to do 2 divided by 2 squared. Does it make any difference if I wrote it as -2 here? Why? Why does it make no difference? Because you're going to square it. And so a negative times a negative will be a positive. So you really don't have to pay attention to the negative when you're finding your magic number. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1 squared is 1. So I'm going to add 1, subtract 1. So I get my parentheses squared, the x, half of -2, -1. And then I have -5 minus 1, -6. All right, C tells us that we need to write a vertex. So I want you to take a moment. You should be doing notes in pencil. Write down what you think the vertex is. You can always erase it if you're wrong. Just write down what you think the vertex is. Remember, the vertex is H, K. Did you get 1, -6? Good. All right, the next thing it asks is if you're opening up or down. So you have to look at that A value. So in front of the parentheses, is it positive or negative? Positive. So we're going to open up. So I can give myself a little hint. It's going to look like that. I open up. My axis of symmetry, it's always going to be an x equals equation. And you always figure it out looking at the vertex. So what's the x value for the vertex? That's it. The simple sketch, I mean it. It should be a simple sketch. I'm going to have an x, and I'm going to have a y, and I'm going to just jot down some stuff that I figured out. I'm not going to put any hash marks. I'm not going to scale it. It's just a simple sketch. So I'm going to label it with some of the things. I'm going to label it with this. I'm going to label it with this. I'm going to label it with this. So I'm going to use those things. So I'm just going to go put a mark. It says that the y-intercept is at -5. So I'm going to come down here, mark that as -5. It says I'm going to go through right there at -5. I'm going to have a point. I also know that I'm going to have a point. This is my vertex point, and it's going to be at 1, -6. This is why I make you do all those mystery pictures so that we can get good at plotting points. So we're going to go 1 and then down 6. So we go over 1 and down 6. I didn't scale anything, but it'd be about right there. It's just a sketch. So over 1, down 6, I'm about right there. I know that I'm going to open up. So it has to look like a happy face. I'm opening up, and that point is 1, -6. So I just labeled that point. So to open up and to go through that point, I'm going to have to be something like that. Make sure you put arrows on the end of your graph. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just making a simple sketch. It needs to look like a U, needs to have those points. And so that's two things. We missed our axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry is just a line. We're going to make it dashed. It cuts through the middle of your graph. The axis of symmetry is always an x equals equation. X is equal to 1. It's just a simple sketch. Any questions over any of those parts for the sketch or any of the parts? Okay. The next one, I'm actually going to let you guys do it on your own. So I'm going to let you guys do it. I'm going to make a copy of this screen, so I'll do it too. All right, so I'm going to give you 3 minutes. I feel like that's enough time. Don't feel rushed. I want you to take your time, look at your examples, and I want you to really try it. So please don't wait for me. Try it. Use your pencil. You can erase if you need to, but I want you to try it on your own. Sorry, that's kind of loud. Are y'all ready? How did y'all do? What are you struggling with, Lenina? Here? Yeah, so remember that anything inside the X grouping, and this is for the rest of the year, every function that we do, every time it's in the X grouping, it is always opposite of what you see. Every time, yes. How do you know if it goes up or down? You always look in the very front. If there's a negative there, then you go down. I would say most of the time you're going to go up. Sometimes you go down, but it would have to have a negative right here. Same thing here. I mean, it's the leading term. If that's positive, you face up. Any other questions on this one? Anybody that made a mistake, did you figure out it was something simple, a little thing, but you figured it out? Okay, good. And like I said, I know that the homework seems like you got a lot of things to do, but it's just a lot of practicing the same skill. So hopefully you guys will be good at it. Any questions on either one in this one? Either one? Okay. We just have one more skill that we're going to learn on this assignment. And so this one is writing an equation, and it's in vertex form. Everything we're doing today, you got to have it in vertex form. And you're given a vertex and a point. So if you're given a vertex, if you want to write something in vertex form, there's only really three things that you need to write something in vertex form. You need an A, you need an H, you need a K. Well, if you're given a vertex and a point, you already have H and K. What you need is A. Does that make sense? So what you need to write vertex form is you need an A, you need an H, you need a K. You have those things, you can write something in vertex form. If all you're given is a vertex and a point, well, you have two of those things. You have H and K, you have that part, you have that part. But you don't have A. A point doesn't give you A. A point just gives you another X and Y. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to have to solve for A, and then we can write something in vertex form. So what we need to write something in vertex form, we need A, we need H, we need K. We already have H and K. H is 1, K is 3. We don't know A, so we're going to figure it out. The way that we figure it out is we've got this equation. Y is equal to AX minus H squared plus K. It's a lot of letters. We have every letter but A. So we're going to plug all the letters in and solve for A. So I labeled them, and it's good to label them. I know H, I know K, I know X, I know Y, and I'm plugging them in. So I'm even going to rewrite the equation. I have Y is equal to AX minus H squared plus K, and I'm going to plug in the things. What is Y? Negative 15, so I put that here. We don't know A, we're solving for it. What's X? Negative 2, and I have to put the minus. What is H? 1, and it's squared. What is K? 3. Okay. Any questions on what I just did there? I just plugged in all the letters, and I don't have an A. I'm solving for it. The nice thing about solving for it is, like, you're not really doing any high-level math here. All you're doing is evaluating. Did you have a question, Nina? No. Okay. So to evaluate, I have a -15 on this side. The A is on this side. I have some more stuff. We want to get all the stuff away from the A. So to do that, I can subtract 3 to the other side. I can also evaluate this little part. So what is a -15 minus 3? So I get -18. What's -2 minus 1? -3, and it's -3 squared. What's -3 times -3? +9. So my next step would be getting rid of this. So I would divide by 9. What's 18 divided by 9? What kind of 2? -2. So I get A is equal to -2. That's what I needed. Now I have A, H, K. So I can write an equation. So Y is equal to, you could put f of x, it doesn't matter. -2, parentheses, x minus h squared plus 3. So I plugged everything in just so I could figure out that A value so I can write my equation. Any questions on this number 3? All right, I want you to try number 4 on your own. It's the same steps. I'm going to copy this. Give you a couple minutes. It's always a good idea to label what those are. Label H, K, X, Y. Yes. It's going to be -18. Only H changes. How did y'all do? Did y'all get A is equal to 1? Yeah. Okay, is equal to 1, then what's in front of the parentheses is a 1. And then H is 2. Remember, it's opposite inside the parentheses. K is minus 18, so you have minus 18. If you made a mistake, did you figure out what it was? It was easy to fix. Any questions over 3 and 4? Okie dokie. Well, we're done for today. That is it.